Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Thanks to everyone for contributing to today's list. We're making a list of things my kids have never seen. I have 4 kids. My oldest is 14. And there's a lot they haven't seen. Added to the list while we were on the break, people send me Facebook messages and emails and stuff. Dav, I don't know his name, D-A-V, how do you say that? Dav. Dav said, Dav, that's what I said. All right, anyway, Dav says your kids have never seen a credit card imprint. Oh, yeah, like the old machines where you had to put the carbon copy over there and I barely saw that. I only saw that. I don't think anyone's ever imprinted one of my credit cards or debit cards. I've only saw that when I was a kid. But that's the kind of stuff we're looking for. 800-288-9227. We'll continue adding to the list after my next special guest, Jim Verdi. Yeah, you know him, the producer from the Bongino Show. Welcome back to the James Show, Jim. I'm sorry you had to do a little bit of extra work today. You had to host at the last minute. You're having a busy day.
Yes, it was rather surprising, but I think we came out of it okay. Well, by the way, I do remember those credit card things. I used to run them at the pizza place I used to work at in Irving.
They were so loud.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're a local guy here, but you run what is one of the biggest nationally syndicated shows. In fact, it's in the hallowed chair vacated by the great Rush Limbaugh. And to be on such a national level, that puts you really close to the inauguration and all the stuff that was happening over the weekend. What was that like?
That was kind of crazy, too. I mean, from the radio perspective, that was another thing where on Sunday, Dan had decided he's got to go to Washington because we had planned on doing the show from like we normally do.
Wait, he planned this at the last minute on you?
Yes.
Oh my God. I just assumed y'all knew this weeks in advance.
No, we spent Sunday getting it all together, and thankfully the people at WMAL in Washington, D.C. were able to help out, and we got it set up. And it went off without a hitch, so everything was great. For Dan, I thought it was really important for him to be there anyway, and I'm really glad he went because he got to talk to Mark Zuckerberg about this whole Facebook thing and get with these tech people to talk about the whole censorship issue and what a mess it is and how this can't continue. And he explained to him the problems that he had with his own pages, and Zuckerberg was very receptive to what he had to say, the other tech people as well. And I think, and I'm hoping that finally we can get all this censorship regime behind us and not have to worry about that anymore because you and me and Dan, free speech is what we do. That's our thing. We need it. We need to be able to express ideas. Otherwise, this whole thing doesn't work.
Well, Jim, I also wanted to have you on because I finished your book finally. You had given it to me. What was that, at like the presidential debate between Trump and Kamala? You gave me your book. I had like 4 books in front of it, but I finally got back to it and finished it. And you really have 2 books. You have sort of the backstory on how this whole thing came to be. And then the second half of the book are things that were born on the show that you're just sort of codifying into the record.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I wanted to give a little background to what I did and how I came to get into the position that I did, a little background about myself and how I came to believe the things that I did. So that was an important thing to tell the story of how it did. And I thought it was really important, too, to recognize that the death of Rush Limbaugh is the reason of this and how tragic that was and how hard it was going to be to fill that void and how on a daily basis it's really hard for us to do that. And then I just got into, when you talk about getting into the things that were born on the show, it's a lot. I think the one radio station in our town that exemplifies this is The Ticket, where their drops. I mean, everything is an inside joke. And if you've been listening for years, and it's mostly the same guys for 25 years, almost 30 years, it's like being a part of something. You're a part of a family in a way. And when Dan asked me to write it, it's funny. He thought it was just going to be kind of a little pamphlet because we have a lot of this inside stuff. We even use the term P1s like The Ticket does. But I decided to just incorporate everything, and it wound up coming out into a full-blown book. And, James, I hope it was informative. I hope it was a little bit entertaining. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Well, if you're a radio person, if you ever worked in radio, you will absolutely love this book. If you're a radio enthusiast, like I've been listening to talk radio all my life, and I feel like I know these guys, you will love this book. If you know nothing about talk radio, you might still find the first half of this book interesting because you'd be like, I didn't know this is how it all worked. But I think most people who pay attention to radio realize, like, you've probably been fired like 7 times. I've probably been fired about 9 times, and neither one of us are really butthurt about it. That's just the way it goes.
No, and you have to accept that early on, too, that that's the way it's going to go. My first job, it was a year and a half, and then they sold the radio station, and next thing you know, I'm just a morning show producer, and I'm the first one to go. And then 4 months later, I wind up back at the same signal. I was at 105.3 for 10 years, over 10 years, and then wound up, with Radio Disney. Yeah, so you just keep losing jobs, and I lost that job in a format change. They changed the country station I was on, which to me, if anybody still in the area remembers Young Country, still my favorite job. I love that job. It was great. I worked with a lot of great people.
Well, and that it was a creative destruction there, because when Young Country went away, the next format on 105.3 was Live 105.3, and that's where I got my start. So I was born out of the ashes of your Young Country experience. It's
funny you say that, because originally when they flipped the format, it was the Talk That Rocks.
Yes.
And my afternoon show with A.W. Pantoja, that was the only show that moved over to the Talk That Rocks. And we worked afternoons for a full year until they replaced us with Howard Stern. And then I think they made the switch to Live 105.
All right. Well, if you're already a fan of the Dan Bongino Show and talk radio in general, I strongly suggest you get your hands on a copy of the Dan Bongino Show Survival Guide. Jim Verdi put this together, and it has a lot of Texas references. And if you're born and raised here, he's going to talk about a lot of the people that you've already heard on the radio over the years. So it's not just a good radio book. It's a good Dallas radio book. So thank you, Jim Verdi. I appreciate your time, sir.
James, I appreciate you. You're so generous. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's a good book. You earned it, sir. There he is, Jim Verdi, the producer for the Dan Bongino Show, and often the host. This is a guy who today was sitting in Rush Limbaugh's throne, just keeping the torch going. Isn't that sweet? And it happened right here in DFW. All right, all you beautiful people on hold, I'll get to you next. We're going to add to the list of things my kids have never seen, like a film camera. Thank you, John, for sending that one in during the interview. You're supposed to be paying attention to the interview, but I appreciate that. A film, that's good. My kids have never had to develop film or have it dropped off for 1 hour. That's a great one. What you got? We'll continue next on The James Show. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. All right. Hang on a second. We'll continue with we're doing a fun list today of things my kids haven't seen. For example, like my kids have never used a paper map or a payphone. They never rewound anything. So something to that effect. A lot of them have been phone related. Kids have never made a long distance call, collect call, or use an answering machine or anything like that. But there's been some fun additions in there. They've never seen a card catalog at a library. David sent me a Facebook saying they've never seen Saturday morning cartoons. Some of your younger kids haven't even seen a token for an arcade. They don't use tokens at like Chuck E. Cheese anymore? No. I'll explain after my next guest, though. Parag Amin is back on The James Show. Hey, welcome back. I wanted to ask you, in this slew of executive orders, there's a couple things in here that sound like they have taken effect already, including if you're a federal worker, you have to be back in the office full time. Is that effective immediately?
Yes, effective immediately, although the executive order does make an exception. So the way it's phrased, that it says that the heads of all departments and agencies in the executive branch of the government are supposed to take all steps to terminate remote work arrangements and require employees to work in person on a full-time basis. But the department and agency heads are allowed to make exemptions that they deem necessary. Because sometimes what happens is there's been collective bargaining and other agreements that are reached that a number of employees have reached collective bargaining agreements that they can work remotely. So that's going to be one challenge. And so this executive order does allow for some leeway for the heads of these respective agencies to make exemptions that they deem necessary.
Well,
generally, yes, everybody's supposed to be back.
I was curious about this one because I remember this being in the list of things that the Biden administration had done when they were talking about how he's trying to Trump-proof D.C. before Trump gets in. That was one of the things I remember reading somewhere that he took some steps that would keep some of these remote workers remote. Yeah,
and look, I mean, in terms of the president being able to take certain steps, I mean, certainly Biden has taken some steps to try to Trump-proof the White House, but the reality is President Trump is now intentionally trying to undo a number of the things that President Biden has done, including this executive order. So I think there will be some lawsuits. There's already been some lawsuits, and there will be additional lawsuits as a result of this. But there's no question what President Trump wants. He wants a lot more people back in the office. And look, I mean, part of this is very much intentional and a part of the DOGE program of trying to lean out the government in terms of the number of employees it has. And this is kind of intentionally designed to get people to either quit or look for other employment because they don't want to return to full-time work in person.
Well, I imagine they have the same thing that we're having in the private sector. A lot of these employees that want to work from home so they can double dip, have some sort of part-time or maybe even a second full-time employment that they're able to finagle because they've got both offices letting them work, air quote, remotely. So I'll be interested to see how effective this is.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, ultimately, I think part of it is people just want a return on their investment, whether it's the federal government paying their employees or private employers paying their employees. Ideally, we'd like to believe that all employees are honest and doing the right thing and not double dipping or being productive during work hours instead of watching TV or The Price is Right or some daytime rerun of a soap opera. But the reality is, unfortunately, there are people who will take advantage of any situation. And then there are people who will supposedly, quote unquote, work from home for like an hour and claim to have put in an 8-hour day. So ultimately, I think President Trump just wants a return on the taxpayer's dollar for what we're paying federal employees.
Well, you run a law office. What's your policy on remote workers?
So we do have some remote workers, but the reality is that's because some of the remote workers just aren't based where my office is in Los Angeles, California, which has an extraordinarily high expense and cost of living. And so we believe, and I believe in having the best people work for me as opposed to just the best people who happen to live in Los Angeles. So we have a core team that's at my physical offices here in Los Angeles. But then we've got people around the United States as well who assist on various projects and tasks. But we do have systems put into place to help ensure that people are actually working on what they're supposed to be working on and actually being productive throughout the day.
We had another executive order that was supposed to take effect about 11 minutes ago, ending all DEI offices in the federal government. Did that go into effect? Did that get challenged already, or are all these people now placed on leave? Did that happen?
Well, yeah, it was signed, and so these people are put on paid leave for now as the government figures out how to ultimately deal with those employees. Because, look, President Trump has said he wants to create a meritocracy. So in terms of a DEI hire and somebody simply being hired because they were DEI as opposed to based on a full meritocracy, I think that's part of what the Trump administration wants to try to get rid of, or at least that's their stated purpose, is they want a pure meritocracy.
All right. Well, Parag Amin, thanks for taking time and sharing some of your legal expertise with us here on WBAP. How do they find your work outside of the show?
Yeah, so they can reach me on my website at www.lawpla.com. Again, it's www.lawpla.com, or find me on social at Parag, PARAGAMIN, ESQ. So Parag Amin, ESQ on Instagram or TikTok.
Thank you very much, Parag Amin.
Thank you.
So let's do one more addition to the list here. Jimmy in Cooper, you're on WBAP. What would you add to the list of things my kids have never seen?
Well, as a driver, I've gone from, as you said earlier, paper maps onto book maps like Thomas and KeyMap, onto mapping programs, and now we're on apps that do maps. So I don't think, like I said before, I don't think they have any kids that are going to see any physical paper maps anymore.
Well, there was, you know what, that reminds me, there was one point I did a show last year where like we had an outage, cell phone outage or something to that effect, like an AT&T outage. And on that day, there was a bunch of young delivery drivers that showed up at their warehouse job that were like, well, if the map doesn't work on my phone, then I guess we can't work today. And all the old bucks, the old OGs like me and you pulled out the Mapsco book and said, nope, you can find anywhere in town with this handy dandy little reference here. And they had to use what me and you had to use all the way in the 90s into the 2000s, a Mapsco. Did you ever use one of those?
I did, Mapsco, and you had I'm spacing on the name of the computer, the first computer thing you attach to your car.
Oh, that was, we had like a Garmin, and we had,
Garmin,
yeah. Well, I worked at a moving company in college and then for a couple years after that. And so I had to find everywhere in DFW on a Mapsco for about 3 years. It was great. It was a little adventure. Did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs or something like that. All right, what would you like to add to the list of things my kids have never seen? 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Stay tuned. We have some great additions to the list of things my kids have never seen coming up. The lines are full, but we'll continue that after my next guest. This is David Alcott. He's the president of Samurai Success. And I wanted to bring him on because I saw a Gallup survey that shows only 31% of employees are engaged at work. They say that like it's a bad thing, but I really have no frame of reference here, David. What does normal employee engagement look like if 31% is low?
Thanks, James, for having me on the show. This is a staggering and huge amount of challenge with what we're focusing on as business owners, because as entrepreneurs, we're constantly looking for having that labor force to really help us succeed in the visions that we have. And this really focusing on of not being involved in productivity is really challenging us.
So what do they mean by engaged? That sounds sort of subjective.
It is very much. So let's talk specifics. If you really want to take a look at really building a strong foundation for your employees to be re-engaged with your business, you want to focus on three big things. Security in their job, complexity in their work. Can't be too hard, can't be too easy, and a clear connection between what they're doing as employees and the benefits to themselves and the company at large. Okay,
so I go and try and dig through the what they consider engaged, these different questions in the survey, and it looks like it's weighing a lot heavier on workers younger than 35. What makes Gen Z, are they more disengaged than we were at that age?
It's interesting because this really goes to the number 2 point, which is this complexity. Social media and other technologies have so consumed the latest generation. I mean, they're constantly on phones and things like it's very different from us growing up. But they're on the edge of their complexity levels all the time. They're constantly getting feeds from all over the world, politics to deal with, drug stuff to deal with, pressure within their own communities kind of thing. So they're constantly on the verge of exceeding their own complexity levels. So then they go into work with all this edge that they have, and they're just falling down because they're just like, I need a break from all these different things going on. And their workload that they have just challenges that complexity so much that they just fall off.
All right, so if you're a small business owner or you're a person that manages people, what do you do to improve that?
Oh, what a great question, because that's the thing we've learned over 35 years of doing this business is that managing people has really shifted. I know we keep teaching that at our university, but I think you and I both know that so much that we teach at our university systems don't really apply in the real world anymore.
Yeah, managing people, we've noticed that.
Yeah, okay. And wow, we're really seeing it in the workplace. Managing people doesn't work. What works is managing people through a system.
And what does that look like? How do you implement something like that on the ground?
So as entrepreneurs, we're constantly looking for ways to be able to create a vision. That vision is a solution to a problem in the marketplace. So taking that vision and then breaking that down into smaller chunks or processes so that when an employee comes in, whether they come in late, they want to leave early, the question then becomes, how do I maximize the time that that employee is here, whether engaged or not? And the best solution we've found so far is actually providing them a process structured system so they know exactly what they need to do that day. And all those processes are connected to all those individuals into a system that reaches that vision, solves the problem with the marketplace, and you get to win.
Well, that's a lot more complex than my explanation. I figure this is tied to the demise of the Christmas party, because I remember 20 years ago, Christmas parties used to be awesome, and now it's just like, we're going to have some pizza in the break room after lunch. You know, it's gotten so lame. How are you engaged when no one wants to even celebrate baby Jesus anymore?
That's again, it goes back to our beliefs and value systems as our society that really we've introduced our kids to, hey, you can get everything for free. You don't have to work for something, participation trophies. And we could go off on a tangent of things, but I like your Christmas analogy that having faith and having a source outside of yourself is an absolute must for us to be our best selves.
All right, David, how do they find your work outside of the James Show?
You can reach us at samuraisuccess.com. It's our best way to reach us.
What do you guys do?
We're executive coaches that really focus on helping entrepreneurs win with this chaotic environment that we're going to have to deal with for the next 20 years of our lives because demographics are what they are. This new generation is going to be our workforce. And actually, I'm really intrigued by this because entrepreneurs are really designed for this. If they have the right coaching, that they really can succeed in this because innovation is what we're talking about. And this is what entrepreneurs are designed to do.
All right, David Olcott, samuraisuccess.com. Appreciate your time, sir. Let's go back to working on our list. I can squeeze a couple in here if we hurry. Colt in Ennis, you're on the James Show. What would you add to the list of things my kids have never seen?
So I had two things. First is a Cowboys Super Bowl championship.
Oh, Jesus, that hurts. That hurts so bad because it's true. Yeah. My kids have no idea what it's like to even sniff the NFC championship game. So you're making me cry a little bit, but you're right. My kids have no idea what that's like. Thanks for bringing it up. What else you got, Colt?
And then the other is an airport without security checks.
Oh, man. That's right up my alley, too. All right, you get points. Colt gets an even 7 points. Thank you, sir. I remember being a kid and flying by myself without parents. And then when I come home, my parents are waiting for me at the terminal, not at the little pickup where you have to circle around 100 times. You didn't have to take off your shoes. No one had to scan you. You didn't have to get zapped with x-rays, and we were all just fine for it. In fact, I remember people smoking on a plane. I think I need to add that to the list. Hey, give James Parker, the host of the show, I get 3 points for thinking of the smoking on the plane. My kids.
I didn't hear that one. So.
Yeah, well, I rarely see an indoor cigarette these days, but I remember one of my first flights I took with my grandmother going to El Paso, other side of the world. People were smoking on a Southwest plane. That's fantastic. All right, well, when we come back, we'll finish this list. We got some great ones on hold. There's no lines open, so don't even bother calling. But you can send me a Facebook message, and I'll go through some of the additions on the email. We will put the last few items on the list of things my kids have never seen. Coming up next, I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.